Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach, ahead of round 6 of the AFL season. I'll be taking a look at all things SuperCoach here. I will get to the likes of Mark Murphy and what we do with him, discuss a few things there. But first off, talk a little bit about the teams. Now, of course, we have had a bit of a reprieve. Of course, Taranto is back in, O'Meara is in, Pickett dropped, but Nick Newman is in as well. Hartlett, for anyone who happens to have him, Harley Ballack is back in as well. Sammy Mitchell comes back in. No Bruce, surprisingly. That's a bit of a surprise, but Sean Higgins does come back. David Swallow continues to burn people if you're holding on to him with hope. He is rested. Mitchy Hannon comes in. As far as the D's are concerned, quite a few outs. Of course, Hogan with his family issue, well, not issue, his father, unfortunately. Tim Smith is out with a rib. Spencer, of course, that shoulder. Otherwise, SuperCoach, there isn't a great deal to report. Pretty much they are the key ones. So, how does that affect us? It isn't great. You know, a few players haven't come back. A few that we probably expected to come back have not. Your likes of Fox is still out. Bruce, as I mentioned. So, there's a couple there, but at this stage of the season, what do we want to be doing? We want to really start working our teams and starting to transform them from our original team to what our end of season team will look by. And that's all about transitioning players with cash cows going and fallen premiums coming in. So a few guys we should be looking at bringing in. Of course, I think Treloar and Hanbury are nicely priced. Heath Shaw will probably continue to drop, one would imagine. A gettable break even at about 113, I think it was. But it is form. You might just want to see a ton just to give you that confidence once again. Alex Rance potentially might be appealing to some as well. But I really do think this week is all about getting one extra or two extra weeks out of your cash cows and then pouncing. Because I really feel like in a fortnight's time, Heath Shaw will still be nicely priced. Pendlebury will be ripe for the picking, as well as Dustin Martin and Nick Riewoldt likewise. There's 3 to 4 guys that I think are definite must-haves come season's end. And I think if you're umming and ahhing about trading or upgrading, there's no harm in holding off. Look, your mate might upgrade sooner and he might outscore you for a week or two. But I think you'll be able to pocket an extra 100k across a couple of trades at least if you do hold off. Now, if you've kept David Swallow, he's obviously got to go. You know, he's been a disappointing selection. As far as bubble boys or blokes who are about to go up in price, Zachy Fisher, averaging about 62, I think. He's ripe for the picking as well. He's in our midfield. Blake Hardwick in the forward line. 64-point average at 135k. I wouldn't really go searching for him. And other than that, there's not a great deal on offer, to be honest. Parsons should return to the Cats lineup after his suspension. He could be one guy that is appealing. But I think at this stage, it's really about finding where your team is really lining up and where it is getting structured and where you can go from there. So, how do I work my way through my side and the decisions I make? It's all about that break-even number. It's so important, and it's not just looking at this week, but looking at next. For example, of course, I'll use my team as an example and sort of an insight to what I'm thinking. At this stage, how my side is looking, what do I really need to attend to? Probably the midfield is my main concern. Parfitt and Powell-Pepper not scoring well. Who do I want to bring in? I think Dangerfield and Pendlebury are at the top of my list. So I probably feel like I need to generate a bit of cash over the next week or so to bring in those guys. Now, both of them still have break-evens of, I think, over 170. So that gives me a little bit of time. Now, we all know they're capable of 170s, but you've got to play the odds and the percentages. The odds say they'll score somewhere between 110 and 140. So we can comfortably say that they will come down in price, particularly Pendlebury. He'll have that 68 or whatever it was for at least a couple of weeks until he gets rid of that after his third game since. So that gives me a bit of time. So then what am I thinking? How do I bring in a bit of cash? Do I need to make some adjustments to my cash cows and availability of making cash? At this stage, the answer is no, because Newman has come back. That provides me a little bit of stability there. And I do think Proust will come back. Hannon has come back. So at this stage, I'm going to sit on my hands and be quite pleased with where things are at. Now, if you're a guy, you're looking at the forward line, you're saying, gee, I desperately need to make some moves here. I think as long as you aren't losing out on points badly, I think it's important to wait to pick off our premiums at the perfect time. And I think Rewalt will be in a couple of weeks. Obviously, that 161 kept his price quite elevated for some time. I think if we now... His last game was about 79, I think, around about that mark. So he will go down over the next 2 weeks. That's really where you want to be thinking. Dan Butler, for an example, he's probably got one price rise left in him. Of course, it can all change if Rewalt scores 150 or Butler scores 95. All of a sudden, Butler's got a couple more price rises to go, and all of a sudden, Rewalt's price isn't going too far. But all we can really do is try and bet on the odds. The odds of Butler scoring 95, not great. What do we expect? Probably around 60 to 70. Rewalt, again, he's a premium. Odds would probably suggest 100 to 120. You cannot allow and calculate for the outlier of a 150 or 160. We all know it's possible, and if it happens, that's a bugger. But we really got to try and plan our teams around the probable, not about what could happen or what if. We really got to go, well, look, this is probably his range. How is that going to affect in comparison to his break-even? Where can I really structure my trade plan? So that's really how I think, and how I think you should be taking a look at your side. Suss which cash cows have perhaps peaked, which not many have yet. A fair few will still be rising. But suss out how many guys will need to be offloaded, say, next week. Or how many guys do you want to bring in next week? And position yourself to be able to do that. Because it's all well and good knowing when guys will be right for the picking and right to offload. But nothing worse than you get to round 8 and you're like, oh, Jesus, you know, Butler's got to go, Pepper's got to go, he's losing money now. But, gee, Pendlebury is as cheap as he'll get. Dustin Martin has bottomed out. Rewalt has bottomed out. All of a sudden, you're wishing you had 6 trades under your belt and you've only got 2 to use. And all of a sudden, you know, before you know it, they're out of your grasp. And sometimes I harp on about, you know, people probably think, oh, Shorty, who cares? I'll get him next week. It's only 30k. But I think sometimes that can be the difference when, yes, it's 30k for one player. But if you play your cards right throughout the whole season, all of a sudden that 30, 40, 50k that you're saving each time in comparison to old mate who's a bit trigger happy or hasn't planned well, all of a sudden you make 4 right moves to his none. All of a sudden you've probably got 200k under your belt. He's wishing his cash cow was doing better. You've already got that 200k from your other trades and doing them at the right times, getting a premium at his cheapest, offloading a cash cow at his dearest. That is really what this game is about, this trading game. You're not always going to get it right. Sometimes it isn't possible. But if we can, again, play the odds and do it to its best percentage, then we will be well set up. And you will be able to find that 150k when your mate doesn't, because you've traded well for the last 3 weeks. It hasn't necessarily been a downgrade, but it has been getting guys at the right time. And all of a sudden, you can then do another upgrade when maybe others who have traded a bit hastily cannot. So I think that's really, really good food for thought. It is about trading at this time of year and playing your cards extremely well. Now, I said I'd talk about Mark Murphy. Now, what did he do? He has been named by the sounds of it, but I think, let me just double check that, because everyone was talking about Mark Murphy prior to me doing this podcast anyway. Now, look, he has been named. Probably a few, I know there were concerns that he would miss. Now, he was on my agenda regardless, and I do think he is worth talking about regardless. So I'll still talk about him even though he's named, and I definitely still think that he should probably leave your side. Now, he's priced at 570k. He's risen a nice 140. Now, if you're on board him from the start, congratulations and well done, because I must say I did not think he would be a great selection, and my reason was I felt he didn't have a good ceiling. and then he busted out 130 plus for the first 3 weeks. So, look, I probably misjudged that one, and Mark Murphy certainly returned to some of his glory days of 2010 and 2011, 2012 as well. So, look, he's averaging 123.6 from the 5 games, but last week did just score 69, and his break-even is 142. Now, I think the everyday supercoacher or the average Joe is just going to keep Mark Murphy. They're going to go, oh, he's averaging 120, he's fine. You know, it's fine. But I think when you delve deeper, I think it's time to trade him. Now, some people will hold the faith with him, but I am definitely of the opinion that he will not be a top 10, 12 midfielder come season's end. I really do think we'll see his average drop back to around your 107, 108, not to mention the concern about his body currently. And the fact is, he's going to start going down in price now. I think now could be a really good time to perhaps sideways trade, which I would rarely say. Perhaps sideways trade to a premium that you desire, who's right for the picking. Now, the counter argument is, Shorty, come on, he's just scored 69 points. Give the bloke a break. You gave Hanbury so many chances. What are you doing, mate? The facts are that Murphy hasn't been a premium mid for some time. His last 4 years of average, 79, 103, 106, 92. Hanbury's averages and Trelaw averages have shown us that they were worth keeping the faith. I really do feel like Murphy, in a struggling Carlton side with a potential niggling injury now under his belt, I definitely feel like he will start to decline. Not to mention the fact that I know they don't tag as much in the game anymore, but he will get a bit more closer attention because of his great form, and we all know that Murph doesn't handle the tag overly well. So I think it's probably time to pat ourselves on the back if you had him. So that's been a good selection, but it's probably now time to offload him. And if you're out there saying, well, what's wrong with him averaging 105, mate? That's fine. Look, I can understand that. I can understand that thinking. You may be of that line of thinking, throw him at midfield position 8 come season's end. But there will be people who play their cards right and upgrade well in combination with their correct starting squad that come season's end or round 14, round 15, their M8 will be averaging 110 because they've got 8 premium mids. And that's where you'll start to lose points on a weekly basis. And they're only small little margins, but we all know how much 1 or 2 points can equate to the big scheme of rankings over a few players in your team, over a number of weeks, over the course of the season. All of a sudden, that team who just made a 3 or 4 point increase on 6 or 7 players across their team over 12 weeks is going to really outscore you quite significantly. So it's not just about thinking about what you're going to do for next week or how a bloke's going to go on the weekend. We really got to take a bit of foresight, have a look down the field, and really say, where are these guys going to be come the pointy end of the season? So that's about a wrap up from me. A bit of a different weekend preview for mine, more of a Shorty's philosophy about SuperCoach, I suppose. But there weren't any absolute burning questions I didn't feel from the teams or anything else that absolutely needed to be discussed. So I felt it was a good opportunity to touch on a couple of them, bit of the teams, but also talk about where our minds should be set at this stage of the season. And I really do think we need to adopt that sort of mindset for the now and the future. So, look, hopefully that has been helpful. Hopefully you've enjoyed tuning into it. Give me a comment, give it a like if you did enjoy it, and of course, subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying what I'm doing. So, thanks for tuning in, guys. Much appreciated. All the best for your week in SuperCoach. Hopefully, I'm seeing you guys with some nice scores come next week. I'll touch base with you then, and I'll catch you later.